pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay. Okay. Aaron, do you want to call roll or not? Okay. Here?
Here.
Here.
All right. All present and accounted for of the annual budget committee. Okay. Public comment in reference to the discussion of the broadband project is which I issue here. So is there any public comment? Okay. Communication from elected officials or officials. Commissioner, I see you're here. Just talk over this and have our questions, and you can answer them if we do have some, right? Okay. All right, discussion review of broadband project. Okay. Request before us is $2,844,943 out of edit. Okay. Request by Commissioners Judith Anderson and Brendan Kearns. Okay. So, we have parties that can answer questions. We have some, Calissa, where's my? These are our questions from our other council members, right? Okay. Okay. All right. I don't know how you want to field these questions, but here's the thing. Joink has received funds from the state. How much of those funds are being used in Vigo County, and how exactly are they being used for the project?
President Morris,
Morning.
members of the Budget Council. So I do have some things I would like to hand out. Calissa, this was emailed to them, but I thought copies might be helpful. Is that okay to hand that directly to
We
them?
have it.
Oh, they have copies? Wonderful. Okay, so I think you have that in front of you.
This.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah, okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. All right. So, does this answer those, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, almost all the questions that are on here are pretty well answered by the paper.
Okay.
The only
Updated
thing
list,
that
clear
we
my-
might talk about. Rachel, can I read something to you?
please.
Okay, our projected edit balance for the year in 2020 is roughly 6.1 million and 6.6 million in 2021. What does the county typically receive in edit on a monthly basis? Monthly distribution is 455,000 in 2020, should be 466,000 in 2021, approximately 5.6 million certified annually for 2021, but projecting a decrease in revenues for 2022 and beyond. The biggest question on here to me was, what obligations does the county have out of edit for the next 2 years? We don't know. Current cash balance as of today is 10.7 million. Remaining appropriations in 2020 budget is approximately 5.1 million. 2021 budget is approximately 5.1 million. So, on behalf of most of the council, our biggest question is, we don't know what 2022 is going to look like, and this is a big chunk from edit. So I think that's where we are.
Sure. Can I answer just one brief question then?
Yeah, we're just
Um,
gonna just
That's
bounce
okay. So there's been a couple of questions since in regards to, is this one lump sum that gets handed over to the school corporation and then gets handed over to the provider, in this case joint? And the answer to that is no. That will get billed to the county after each individual project is complete, and that investment would be made by the county at that time. So this would be, I don't want to use the word amortized from a scheduling standpoint because we don't know each month what that looks like, but it would happen over a period of time. I think I'm talking to the, really to Rambo and Cheryl. That's-
So of the 2.8 million, you may draw out $300,000. Basically, we're just setting 2.8 million aside to be used for
Yeah,
future.
I'm bringing Josh into this as well, but I would say that it would really be dependent on the project that particular time. We might.
Sure, and I can also answer Mr. Morris's question. I had to pull up some data to do that. There are 40 sites in the county, and so as we've identified those sites, there are install fees as low as $2,500. There are install fees as high as $300,000. We basically allocated the construction as we build by the foot, around to each of these locations. And so each of those sites would be billed to the schools after the site is online and tested by the schools as working. And then at that point, the way the agreement has been drafted, they would seek reimbursement from the county. And there would be some aging. It would take a while for the school corporation to send it to you and take a while for you to process the payable. And it's going to take us a while to construct all this. So those disbursements would be made as each site is completed over the course of 2021 would be my expectation. So it is not it's not a single lump drawdown of edit capacity.
A question for me is, this is, like, we'll build upon this.
Absolutely.
I
That's
mean,
why it's economic development.
Once you get to these points,
Absolutely.
everybody knows that we're going to build on these points to get rid of these deserts.
Yes. So we're a material property tax payer. We pay personal property taxes on all of our fiber optic assets, and we will be paying on these. And so we expect the fiber to have a useful life of 30 years. We expect the conduit in the ground to have a useful life of 50 years. And we've demonstrated a track record of expanding upon this network. That's frankly the only reason why this ask is 2.8 million, is that we've spent tens of millions of dollars already. And that's why we can service so many locations on existing joint fiber that's already in the county. And so we are committed, and I hope our track record demonstrates our commitment to making this network available on a reasonably priced basis to businesses and to cellular companies putting up towers and eventually to individual single-family homes.
Brennan, do you want to address any of the edit concerns?
Do you want me to answer Mike's first question?
I think it's in.
Yeah. The number of applications underneath the Next Level Connects program. The Next Level Connects program by the state was in unserved areas that didn't have 10 by 1, 10 meg download, 1 meg upload. We received funding for 7 projects. And of those 7 projects, 3 are in Vigo County. And the funding we received for those 3 projects in Vigo County is approximately $737,000. And that funding reduced the mainline construction costs. I'm sorry, I thought I was on silent. I'll make sure I am in a second. Reduced the mainline construction costs, particularly in the southeast part of the county around Lewis and Blackhawk. And I don't have the exact number, but if memory serves me correct, by roughly $150,000.
Okay.
I think I'm going back to kind of what you touched on, Councilman Schweitzer. You guys have the map in front of you?
Yeah.
Would you mind looking at that? And bear with me. I don't have my glasses that I need, so I'm going to extend this out. And I really have a hard time seeing red and green, so this is not working out well for me. Look in your future commissioners. Take a look at your districts, if you don't mind. Chris, in yours, you see a red line going out to the Prairieton area and Prairie Creek area. By the county supporting this investment, we get service out to that area. It would not make business sense for any utility to run a line out there. They wouldn't, and throw something at me, Josh, if I'm saying something wrong, but this is probably something that Joint's not going to lay that line out there for the 3 or 4 or whatever houses that are in that area. I constantly talk about Fountainette in my district. Look how long that line is. And that's an area that's still populated. This will help retain people in that area. And, you know, Chris, you and I are dealing with the exact same situation effective tomorrow. Schools are shut down. We're fortunate we have internet access. My daughter's in 2nd grade, so she's not going to be on the internet program, but if she was in 3rd grade, you know, we're fortunate that we have Wi-Fi that does work occasionally, most of the time. I don't know how it is where you live, but any of these areas where you see red lines, service isn't there. You look at Hoosier Prairie kids, you know, I know there's numbers that show us how many kids are not going to be served at Hoosier Prairie, but if this system were established, they would at least have a location to go to now to connect. Regarding EDIT, I'll give you a copy of this, what's been allocated, what we're looking at for 2021. Revenues was 2020's estimate. You know, this is information that we could all work from. I reviewed it yesterday. Michael, Tammy, and I went over it. We don't see any concern. Jimmy Bramble, trying to figure out, are we going to be able to survive at the end of the year? You know, one of our funds, food and beverage, came in a lot higher than we ever anticipated. Projected shortfalls were not at the rates that we thought they would be. We still need to be aware that income's probably going to be less. But when you look at our road funding, you know, I know that was a concern. EDIT doesn't touch this. EDIT doesn't touch our bridges. That comes from a different fund. Roads primarily are funded through non-EDIT money. We use EDIT money for matching funds, community crossings, which makes sense. You know, when you guys are in the commissioner seat, you'll see how EDIT money goes towards roads in our districts. We of course need to keep that going, but you know, it looks like we've got a pretty good cushion right now. So I don't know if that's really answering your question, Councilman Schweitzer, but you know, I'll get this to all council members. But you know, I feel good about this.
Councilman Morris, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead. Sure.
And this may be to Rachel or Josh anyway, and completing it by 2021, and then would that be your estimate to use that much in 2021? I mean, I just kind of wanted to clarify.
Sure.
I realize it's one lump sum, not going to the school corporation, but it
Sure.
would be one lump sum appropriated to the EDIT fund, and if we were to
Yes.
one lump sum. So I guess I just wanted to clarify.
I think it's important to manage expectations that it is a 2021 appropriation.
Okay.
From a joint receivables perspective, we can be relatively accommodating on the aging of your payables to the extent that is helpful.
So you would expect to use the whole 2.8?
I would expect to have everything constructed and invoiced in 2021.
Okay.
Now, there is as much uncertainty in our world as there is yours,
Right.
in terms of quarantines, the impact of quarantines on our staff, material availability, that the supply chain is still a bit of a... Take our design from a high-level design in December to a low-level design, ready this completed as possible in 2021.
Okay, that answers. I just want
We employ about 85 individuals, and about half of those are in a construction discipline, and so we're running 40 local employees, and so I expect us to be able to get on this in earnest and get it completed in 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
School corporation feel accomplish teaching kids. That's one, right? The second thing is for continued community development. So that's the two issues.
That's how I look at it. The school corporation, their original ask was for this construction to be funded under the grant.
Yes.
When the state allocated that money across all of the applicants for the grant money, they came back and said, we'd love to fund your, in paraphrasing, we'd love to fund your equipment, we'd love to fund the service fees. We're not in a position to fund the special construction. We then looked at all the places Joink already had fiber, tried to identify as many locations that were already on net that met the areas that are impoverished, low income levels, and no availability to broadband pursuant to FCC data. And we said, gosh, there's still 84 locations in the city and the county where we really need to be able to extend the network to. How can we fund that special construction? And that led us to the conversations with the mayor for the city and with the commissioners for the county. And that's why we're here today asking for this support, is that I do believe that this is a appropriate use as a taxpayer of economic development resources, because we will use this not only for that first purpose of serving these locations where students can get online, but we will use this to expand our network to get to where we have broadband as close to the user as possible. And I also think it will help us tremendously as we pursue other grants in the future to extend this network, hopefully all the way to people's homes in the upcoming years.
Another key component that we talked about at the last discussion was how this is going to help our fire service agencies. You know, this is going to 19 facilities in the county. I had conversations with our EMA director this morning and Vicki Oster, our 911 director, who all of you know. If we do have a failure with our radio system, this will provide a backup system. It'll provide a communication mechanism from 911 dispatch directly to those stations. And, you know, we're looking at down the road a combined county-wide radio replacement that includes the city, ISU, West Terre Haute, all EMS services within. In our last meeting, our last advisory board meeting, a number of $14 million came up. So there's a possibility that this investment could help us save an awful lot of money down the road when it comes to radio replacement, because in 2 or 3 years, we may be looking at a completely different technology mechanism altogether, and it may be broadband focused. So this helps get us ahead. There was talk earlier about, you know, should we look at some public safety, some of the 911 dollars towards it. You know, that of course is up to you. But I can see that once this system is established and if we do use it to attach and broadcast to those stations, there's merit to that.
Mr. President,
Yes.
could someone tell me, with these extensions, maybe Josh, you would be able to tell me this, how many homes could access these extensions if they would all connect?
So our initial focus has been to establish these community access points. These are going to be in places that are safe for a family to go and to get online. We are not initially building service into a single family home underneath these extensions. I expect us to at some point in the future, but that's not in the current scope.
And then as far as the hot spots,
Sure.
In the hot spots that we have, for instance, at the public library and ISU,
Yes.
Do we know how many people access those hot spots?
I don't know those two specifically.
How about other hot spots?
I do know, based on the survey data, that a lot of these families do not have access at home and they need a place to go. And it's unlikely that they're going to drive all the way downtown to go to the public library. Transportation is an issue for a lot of these families. And so I think it's important that that we rely on that survey data set to understand that these will be used. I don't have a good referenceable example of utilization because there isn't a place for these families to get online that is near their home.
That's one thing I'm wondering.
Sure.
You know, for some folks, I mean, if they have a hot spot, do they have a car? Can they afford the gasoline to drive there in January, February, and leave the car running? And how
Oh, sure.
is it going to be used? I mean, I just am wondering about the actual use of it.
Sure, I think I respect that question very much. I think it is a little bit different to imagine that in wintertime than it is in typical Indiana weather. What is the other 8 or 9 months of the year? Our expectation is that these are going to be placed in locations that are safe, that have green space, that have an outdoor bench. I imagine the fire station by our office at 9th and College. There's a lot of nice green space where I envision students being able to walk 2 or 3 blocks, get online, do their homework, and walk back home.
I do think it's great for the nice weather and
Sure.
outdoor use and so forth. I'm particularly thinking about remote learning for children
Sure.
in the wintertime during
Sure.
this school,
Sure.
and where the kids could go to do their homework.
Sure. Commissioner wants to speak to this too, but we have identified locations that I believe are going to open their doors and make warm, safe places accessible to students. And that is the expectation that the school corporation has, is that an MOU will be entered with each of these locations, where the locations will make warm, hospitable indoor space available for a student to do their homework, get in, get out. And that will further the positive relationship that those students have with adults. That's the hope. These are identified locations that should be safe for a student and their family to go to, that will be warm and out of inclement weather. I am just resistant to standing here and promising that to you because we're in an ever-changing world. Perhaps those facilities will say, due to COVID, we're not comfortable with students being in our building. Those are all very real possibilities. But in a normal world, as I have personally reviewed and worked on the list, I am very comfortable that these locations will be hospitable to students in inclement weather, subject to the COVID abnormalities that we're all living with.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilman Wager, I'd like to share that in the beginning, when we worked on this, Josh noted that the routes were chosen, or the locations were chosen to rural areas based off what we identified as an issue area when we did the Blue Truck Cavalry on helping food distribution. It was an eye-opener to see how many people did not have transportation to get to even our pickup points. We collectively got together, we figured out what would be the best locations throughout the county to get food to children. And then the first day we discovered there are people that can't get to us. So there are volunteers in each location that would pick up food and then distribute it. In Fountainette, there's one lady that would pick up and take care of 80 kids on her own. We would basically load up her van and truck, and they would go out and do distribution for 2 hours after they picked it up. So transportation will continue to be an issue, but by getting the broadband close to them, they could probably develop their own system with neighbors to get the kids there. I would assume that would happen until we can get it further out to the community.
I don't want us to fall into the trap of believing that the only way to service a single-family home is to extend fiber into that single-family home. That is the absolute most expensive way possible to service a home. Joink has tremendous experience in utilizing fixed wireless, where we put transmitters on top of grain bins and poles and all kinds of other structures to distribute high-speed internet, and we're very good at that. We do that in hundreds of locations in eastern Illinois and western Indiana. It is conceivable that along these routes, we can install additional wireless transmitters that will send a wireless signal into people's homes. But that certainly isn't a possibility until I have fiber near those potential transmitter locations, which this would provide. So you have a commitment from me that Joink will work to find every way possible to get every bit of bang out of your buck on this investment, and establishing some wireless transmitters along these routes that can service homes is a possibility. It's just premature for me to commit to that or even to evaluate it until we know this is in the ground and possible.
And I appreciate that. I mean, I grew up in western Vigo County at the state line, and we had dial-up, and
Sure.
I'm vividly aware
Yeah,
how that works. I think we've received this request, coming from the school corporation, and given to believe that, we're going to make it possible for kids to remote learn
Yes.
under the circumstances that they find themselves now. Um, I don't know how applicable that's going to be in the immediate future, and I think we need to be aware of that. That under the best of circumstances, that some kids are just not going to be able to access remote learning.
Well, I've learned that so many things in life aren't binary.
Yeah.
It's not a yes or a no or a 1 or a 0. And I've also learned that extending the opportunity to choose to participate, the opportunity to have access, is oftentimes the first step. And I think that this investment in establishing these additional 84 locations give students and their families a much more proximate way to get online that isn't subject to any usage fees or any overages. These access points will have the exact same speed that an access point in any school corporation classroom has. They will be provisioned at 500 megabits by 500 megabits, extremely fast speeds. And a student, in a matter of moments, could download all their assignments and upload all their assignments. If the weather and the site conditions are hospitable, they could stay and conduct full audio and full video conferencing and attend sessions. It is not ideal. Ideal would be access in every home in Vigo County. And that request would have a lot more zeros. But I believe this is a fantastic first step, and I believe it provides connectivity in locations that are proximate to where a family with just the tiniest amount of resources can make it work more often than not.
Yeah. When you all sat down to calculate this out, and Commissioner Kearns, maybe I can ask you about this. Have you thought about, spreading your request out to the community, like to include the Wabash Valley Foundation, to Andy in with this, and other entities, so that the county doesn't have such a heavy lift on this thing?
I can't answer that because I'm very aware of the ask, and we are at the end of that funding stream. This is what's needed after all the other grants and stuff have been presented. But I know Josh can expand on that, or Rachel, particular to the foundations.
A big question that I was asked last time by Councilwoman Spence was what happens after 2 years? And I believe those other agencies could potentially play a role in various community grants to keep this going and to continue to improve it. I believe that the substantial investment in infrastructure, putting these conduits in the ground, much like we pave roads or put natural gas pipelines or water or sewer in the ground, I believe that this is a good fit for EDIT from the perspective of economic development. And I think that we need to work with those other agencies and the timelines that their grant windows and grant applications allow. It would certainly be more beneficial to list as many community agencies as partners in this endeavor as possible. And I believe when we look back 2 to 5 years from now, all of those names will be on the list of people who have helped move the needle on broadband for students in Vigo County. But specific to this capital request today and the timeline that we're working under, I feel relatively comfortable that the resources that those other agencies can bring to bear are not especially material in the scope that we're looking at.
Thank you.
Do you want some kind of a spreading the cost out of this type of thing, or what?
Well, I think we're just going to have to tell the full council what we've come up with, and if you want to make a recommendation,
Can I say one thing before we do that?
sure, of course.
We spoke a little bit before the meeting, but I want to tell you why, both of you guys, why I'm for this. In good faith to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, this would be a smart move. In good faith to entrepreneurs throughout the county, this would be a smart move. In good faith to our students and teachers, this is a smart move. $2.8 million is a lot of money. $50 to a lot of people in this community is a lot of money. We have entrepreneurs in New Goshen, Prairieton, Prairie Creek. We gave a tax abatement a few weeks ago for a company on the Park Clay Vigo line that probably doesn't have internet access. So for us to provide internet access to more of Vigo County, it takes one entrepreneur to get started, to hire 5 more people, to hire 10 more, 20 more, and they can do that in the county near their residents. I do have a second grader, like Mr. Kearns. She doesn't have a Chromebook, but we have about 4 or 5 students at our house throughout the week that my wife basically teaches who can't afford, their parents can't afford internet at all. To me, at this point where we are now with the virus, it doesn't look like it's going to go away anytime soon. So that means our students probably won't go back to school at all this year. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I'm saying that's a huge possibility. So unfortunately, for many parents, they got to work, they got to teach, they got to provide. And this is just a small tidbit to make it a little bit easier for them, even though it may not happen dramatically quick. If we have something like this that happens in the future. And as we move forward with all entities, the city, the county, school corporation, this just shows good faith to state leaders that we're working together as a community to collaboratively to work together for our students, our employers, our seniors, our schools, fire departments, everybody. So my recommendation would be for this to be favorable to the full council. And if you guys want to jump on that, cool. If not, that's fine. But from a younger person's standpoint, that's where I'm at.
Let me ask one more question. Have you asked the school corporation why they would not favor putting some actual cash money into this thing? They've come up with some money from the county, from the Community Investment Board recently, that to $2 to $3 million. I know they have some things, expensive things that they've had to pay for recently, but I mean, as we have, as a county, certainly, I mean, maybe they would want to ante in a little bit of money. Would that be reasonable?
Can I take some of this and then, okay. So from a school corporation standpoint, and Dr. Hayworth couldn't be here today, as you can imagine, he has pretty big grill at the back door, so he wishes he could be here. I will share with you that when Dr. Hayworth originally reached out to RGL Solutions, he had a very specific scope that he was looking at. That scope did not include this expansive project. He shared with the council last week a little bit of what that scope was, which included more Chromebooks and more buses in certain areas, in which, of course, he would then hire bus drivers, take on some additional buses, put them in specific areas across the county, and then those families would have to determine their schedule based on the time and place in which that bus would be there. Our team sat down with Dr. Hayworth, recognizing that they already had a partnership with Joink with the schools in the past and present, and asked if we could look at this more collaboratively and more comprehensively. So in fairness to Dr. Hayworth, I will tell you that the original scope that he brought to us was not what we brought to you last week. We asked him to collaborate, to work with us, to allow other people to come to the table. So in fairness, we feel like the $1.4 million that not just school corporation, but our community received for these students is something that goes well beyond what we were going to receive in just those 2-year periods of time that was going to fund. The goal with that $1.4 million, and we originally submitted, wasn't just the 1.4. Remember that we made the request that was comprehensive in a way that was going to lay the foundation for not just the school corporation, but economic development as well. So in regards to the request of the school corporation, I think that you would be hard pressed to find any school corporation across the state of Indiana that would be making specific or significant investments in broadband as they're trying to deal with other things within their school corporation. So
I want to add one thing.
you go right ahead.
What allowed the school corporation to ask for $1.4 million under gears was because they had already invested in 1 year alone in putting Chromebooks in the hands of every single student. And so what I would offer you is that they've invested in the software and the licenses and the devices and in the professional training that allow a student to have a device they can take to one of these locations and get online. And they stretched their resources to do that. That project had been planned over a 3-year period, and they accelerated it into a single year. And that's why they need help with this, is because they funded all of those devices and all of those upgrades.
Thank you.
And I go back to, I think if you were to do a quick Google alert search, Councilwoman, that you would have a hard time finding a school corporation that has invested a significant amount of their capital in broadband. They are relying on their partners, their city, their county, their towns, providers and others to help them move the needle on that conversation.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mike?
All right, well,
Melissa has a question.
yeah,
I can kind of take some of these questions and roll them all into one with several prongs, so
All
that
right.
they can at least be asked, and if you can provide the information.
excellent.
A couple of weeks ago, a week ago or so, Commissioner Carnes brought this document over, and he said it was to be updated. It provides a list of all the locations for the city and the county, and the various phases, and also total cost. Wanted to know if it's possible to get an updated list, because the numbers just does not match up.
What do you mean?
And along with that list, a clearer map of the proposed location. And then at the same time, again, if it can be like in phases, what the phases look like it's done in this document. And then estimates for the firehouse location versus community locations, and if there are ones that are higher priority.
I wasn't aware of, well, we have prepared an order, I'm aware of that, and we provided a number of weeks ago a sample order and a draft of a reimbursement agreement that together would make for this agreement. And it just doesn't sound like that's been circulated, so we will get that circulated.
I've not seen it, but
Yep,
if
we will
it
get
has an
circulated.
updated list, and
It does.
I think one of the other things they also were interested in was possibly a map that may be a little bit clearer this, even if it's a bigger map,
Yes.
because it's real hard to see, and
It is.
the clouds get in the way too.
They do get in the way, don't they?
Mhm.
We will work to provide that. This probably represents hundreds and hundreds of pages of construction drawings. That scale is obviously unnecessary, but maybe we'll break this into 8 or 10 pages. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so that, it's a little bit easier to understand.
We will do that, and we will circulate this this reimbursement for fiber optic construction agreement. This was a draft that memorialized the mechanics that we talked about earlier, and it also has in the final pages a breakdown of the orders for the city and the orders for the county, which list the specific
Now,
locations.
is that the final
And the-
44? Because I think this list has like 46.
That's
on it.
right. There's 40 locations in the city and 44 in the county, or 44 in the city and 40 in the county, one or the other. But they are all detailed here, and they correspond with the push pins that are on this map by color code in terms of community center, fire, or police, park, and school. So that's been prepared, and it just doesn't sound like it was circulated. We'll get it to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Describe it if you don't mind, but that's pretty big. So we're not
Yes.
over the 2.2 by any means, but the goal of actually he was referring to the MOUs, you might.
Sure. So
Well, I guess the other thing is, because the other question they had was, do you have them prioritized? Are there some that are definitely must-haves, and some that are
My
Maybe
expectation,
not quite as, if they wanted to
sure.
reduce the scope or something.
Sure. If the council were to reduce the scope, we do have priorities in place. Otherwise, at this point, we have filtered and filtered and filtered to where I believe the priorities are less relevant. I believe that every site on here serves an important purpose as I've reviewed it. And I think the priorities are less relevant than they were 160 sites ago.
Right.
So at this point, I really don't think the priorities mean as much. Essentially, they are relevant from a availability of broadband and an economic condition of the area perspective, and that's about it. When you look at the order is grouped, in this case, into parks, fire, community centers. They're in nice big chunks, and the dollar amounts for each site are on the right.
Oh, okay, good.
And what's happening as you look at the map is that we just allocated the dollars to the first site that we hit. So if in this stretch there's 5 sites, it's allocated on a construction cost basis to the first site, then from the first to the second, then to the second to the third. So it's not as if you can go to the order and delete one site, because that one site may very well be this big section in the middle. But
Yeah, you'd have to start from the end.
that's right. So it's very important as you review this that you don't feel like you can just scratch off sites, because some sites get you to other sites and it's all very interrelated. But it was a mechanic to help with the cash flows and to provide a clean way to invoice each site as it is completed. So it's an appropriate allocation, but it's not an allocation that allows you to easily make modifications.
All right, okay.
I'm sorry, Todd. Just one more time. Can you
Sure.
explain to them that-
Yes, I'm sorry. Rachel had asked me a moment ago, and I failed to do so. We have made assumptions in these locations that the business or the organization will be agreeable to establishing this access point. If for some reason they are not, we will need to perform a site substitution, find another business or agency in that area. I don't think that's going to be very likely, but if we can't reach an agreement and if it isn't installed, then it would not be invoiced, or we would make a substitution that would be appropriate.
So some of these that are listed, you've not reached out to them yet? I mean, because I guess maybe that would be another thing. I mean, how open are they to people coming into their parking lots?
Sure. My understanding is,
Especially when they're fire departments, is there
Sure.
a place that they can go that they're not going to be in the way of
yes,
fire trucks that are trying to
yes.
come or go from the department?
Yeah, my understanding is those conversations have been had informally.
Oh.
I can't speak to there's not a pile of signed MOUs, and you'll learn if you haven't already just from listening to me, I'm relatively cautious, and I want to be very reasonable in setting expectations. And so I think there's some chance there could be some site substitutions in this list.
Okay.
This list was based on a mutual understanding of a lot of people that reviewed the list of who would be agreeable and under what conditions and specifications. And certainly, we talked about 911 earlier. I think that's another example of economic development, is that we're getting this infrastructure and these resources out there so that so many different constituents can benefit from it, not just the students.
Well, I was just talking with my council people again, and the whole thing was very simple on school corporation. I did some rough math. They said they're down 540 students at $9,300 per student from the state. That's about $5 million shortfall in their budget. So the stipulations that the school corporation's making to try to accomplish education for our children is going to be stressed, to say the least.
It will be.
So it seems to me that when we start to look at it, at least myself, there's no guarantee on students' usage,
No.
that it's going to be used, that it's not going to be used, that it's going to correct this problem or that problem.
Nope.
So if we look at it from a utility, i.e. a water line or a sewer line or something, to people around the county, that this is economic development.
Right.
And that could be I know I see Griffin Bike Park on here. That request was made 3 or 4 years ago, I think, by our park director to run fiber optics over there for events. So I'm guessing that there's still not any shelter over there that somebody can shelter in place at Griffin Bike Park. I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's no place to be there at 20 degrees in January with snow on the ground. So this would be okay at Fowler Park? Yeah,
We've
okay.
added Fowler Park to the list.
Thank you, Brenda. So, you know, I think that Old Mill Dam Park, this can accomplish some things. So I think this one council person, it's an infrastructure build-up. Like I say, like another utility, sewer lines, water lines, et cetera. So if we want to go with that, and the other thing is the anticipation is you're going to do this one day. If it's a year from now or 10 years from now or whatever, you're going to try to keep building and building to service as more clients as you can, right?
Yes, our economic model is that with each customer that signs up, we try to recover our cost of extending our network to them.
Yep.
I can think of industrial customers in Terre Haute who called me in 2015 or 16, and I said, well, it'll be $100,000 to extend our network to you. But then when they called 2 years later, the answer was it'll be $5,000 because we were closer to them as a result of 10 other customers between us and them.
I can relate to that. I believe you quoted me 25,000 and it wound up being 2,500 after you extended your lines and could connect me.
Right. So this is a big shot. I didn't remember that. Thanks for bringing it up. But this is a big shot in the arm for reducing install fees for small and medium businesses and hopefully getting us to where we can do more residential.
Mm-hmm.
And extend our own wireless offering so that we can provide fixed wireless until we can find a way to make fiber work.
I think one of the things is we've just been flailing with this virus thing to try to solve some of these questions, and this is no guarantee.
This is absolutely no guarantee, and to the extent that you've heard my tone this morning be cautious or reserved, it is solely out of respect for your position and public money. We are a material property taxpayer. I think the best way for me to demonstrate to you that I believe in this being economic development is that I'm signing up to pay property taxes on it. I mean, when this is in the ground, I'm paying property taxes on it forever, whether it's used or not. And I believe that we will find ways to offset the cost of those property taxes through customers along the way. I've never asked for property tax abatement. I've never asked for any abatement from the county. We have paid our fair share since day one.
Josh, when did you get started?
Well, I got involved in April of 2004. We put our first foot of fiber in the ground in 2014. At that point, we were doing a lot of fixed wireless and licensed wireless, and our biggest customers wanted fiber. And we sent a couple of guys off to training, and they called about 2 days in, and they said, we can do this. So we bought a used truck and trailer and excavator and vacuum, and got our authority from the state to put things in the right of way, and got started in 2014, and we've built almost hundreds of miles since.
You know, I still use Joink email. I still have a Joink email address.
Great. You and thousands of others.
Yeah, but no, thank you for your commitment to Terre Haute and Vigo County, and you know, you're a pretty big deal throughout the whole state of Indiana, so we appreciate it.
Well, I can only do this because of what Vigo County has done for me, and Jackie's with me today, my sister and VP of Operations. I mean, we're both products of Vigo County School Corporation and this community, and I know there's a lot of question about how will you extend this and how will you make it available, and all I can tell you is at some point you got to trust us, and we've demonstrated for years that we'll make this network available and we'll do it affordable. We love this community. We love doing business here. I think we'll look back on these routes as being wonderful routes to the continued economic development of this county. We've had the delight and the pleasure of servicing almost every new business that has come to town in recent years. And that's been a real honor. So I hope this leads to lots of economic impact that replenishes the fund, and that's the goal.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So did you make a motion, Mr. Schweitzer?
I did, if you guys want to act on a favorable motion to the full council for the 2.8 million.
Put it in a motion.
And it sounds like Vicky just quietly said, put it in motion.
Not
Yeah.
very quiet, put it in a motion.
That's a motion.
Yep.
All right.
Second.
Motion to move ahead to the full council appropriation from edit for $2.8 million for broadband extension. Move ahead to the full council. You want a roll call vote or you want this by?
However you want, your co-host, but it's
All those in favor by aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show that this moves ahead to the council favorable with a 3-0 recommendation. And I could kind of listen to you all day talk about building that system out. I don't know whether that's just weird or what, but digging and putting cable in and connecting things, just building things. I think it's building things.
I think it is too. I have this fascination with manufacturing raw materials on one side, finished goods on the other, and I've never been able to win at that. But this is pretty close to put conduit in the ground and cable and splice it. You're welcome to any of you, anyone here is welcome to visit. So we'd be happy to host tours either at our operation or at a job site if this does progress, or even if it doesn't, and you want to see other parts of our operation. We're always welcome. Anyone here is always welcome to learn about our operation.
Okay.
Josh, I know-
Rachel?
Well, I was going to say, I know Josh walking away wanted to talk, but I just want to say that from a commitment standpoint, I know that Joint doesn't speak for you, but you can correct me. That Joint stands ready, as well as some of our other partners, to continue to push. I know the county as well wants to push for additional grant funding in the future. I genuinely believe that this is the right step forward in allowing us to be more aggressive and competitive with those grants. And so we stand committed to continue to push that effort way beyond this particular commitment.
Yeah, we're in a. You asked me about the next. Your opening question was about the next level grants, and we had submitted 13. And the informal feedback that I got back from the state on the reason our other 6, which a number of were materially Vigo County, very big Vigo County projects, disproportionately big Vigo County projects. Their comment back was that the average match from the service provider and other programs was much greater than the match that we provided. And the reason other service providers had bigger matches is that their community foundations and their counties and their cities were providing support in the form of matching dollars. And so I think there will be an opportunity in round 3, if there is a round 3, for us to resubmit those projects to demonstrate this kind of support and commitment, and to continue to demonstrate that we are collaborating in West Central Indiana. And with more collaboration, I think we can succeed at more grant dollars to continue to expand this network closer and closer to people's homes.
I think that's one of the questions that taxpayers have.
Sure.
They say, why are we doing this, or why are we doing this particular project? And the reason is because these things are laid out by the state or the federal agencies, and to we don't have quite the our ideas and their ideas might be a little different.
Well,
And theirs are better generalized, but we got to take advantage of them.
yeah, we've recently hired a grants coordinator on our staff. We're working closer and closer with RJL. We don't want to leave any potential grant opportunity unturned, unexplored, and hopefully I'm back in front of you again in the future with some amazing opportunity with a very disproportionate match. I think they're out there, and our eyes are wide open, and this project is a fantastic first step. Thank you.
We're out of money.
Your, your count, your, ca-
I'm
your ca- your
I'm here at
county,
your pleasure.
your county has weathered this very well because I believe the council as a whole has been good stewards of the tax dollars, and we're going to continue to do that, I think. And so we do have some struggles with looking out to 2022 and in a crystal ball, but who doesn't? And but so far so good, and but I think you've answered my questions.
Good luck on that.
Thank you. Appreciate your support today.
You've got some people here. Any other questions?
What's the news on the the flyboys coming to Holman? All big secret?
So there was the virtual visit that was held a couple of weeks ago. Little unconventional. Typically, those visits are done in person, on site. You get to really show and tell a little bit easier. So huge kudos to Commander Saylor, Colonel Saylor out at the 181st and her team. They worked diligently to prepare for that. We were able to get in front of some of the site selectors of that project, and I should say Terre Haute, Salvio County. We did, I think, a pretty exceptional job. They were very positive in their response. This is extremely competitive. We don't think we'll know something regarding the top one or two until the end of December, early January. And remember, if we do end up in the top one or two, that doesn't mean we still aren't competing. So we're going to be competing for that top one, which means we'll be bringing up other resources and things from the state level. So this is a journey, but we're hoping we reach that top one or two by January.
Wow, good deal.
But the virtual site visit went very well. So thank you for asking.
We have a lot to offer though that the other couple places can't give them. So that's great.
Well, you know, when you see some of these other states on there that have been doing, they've been investing their infrastructure a little differently, not from a county standpoint, but from a federal government standpoint. It looks a little daunting, but I think that's really in our favor right now. From an airspace standpoint, there's really no competition. So, they can come in and they can have all of our airspace plus or minus little commercial work and what ISU does with their flight school. So I think we are a very competitive space for that mission set.
Nobody around to steal their secrets either.
That's right.
We had there was a comment made at a meeting the other Monday morning that said something about the SEDS and updating it. That's a tool that you need updated and to use for your. Okay.
Yes, so what he's referring to is the West Central Economic Development District serves as our main agency for the SEDS document, which, for lack of better words, is a regional tool that allows us to determine what our general economic demographics look like. What are our needs? What do we have too much of? What do we not have enough of? And what do our priorities need to look like moving forward? So that data that's collected is data that we then have to use, or we're in a lot of cases required to use for some of the federal governments that we apply for, or federal grants that we apply for. So that SEDS document is extremely important and has to be updated every so many years. So that process is happening right now.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So if we've got a common council request for support of West Central, it's all tied together. They can't operate without some of these things. Okay. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion accepted.
Did you have anything on the CARES?
What? Oh. Excuse me.
need an appropriation for that entire $3.1 million.
Today?
No, well, prior to the end of the year. And all these CARES Act or COVID-related expenses that have been made in various departments that are overdrawing their appropriations, we'll make an adjustment and move it into that single appropriation. And that will take care of, you know, continued expenses for tracers and plexiglass or whatever they're gonna buy to the end of the year.
So what do you need today?
We need your approval to pass on to the council a request for $3.1 million. I think the appropriate place probably to put it is in the commissioner's budget. A line item for other services and charges related to COVID pandemic expenses. Then at the end of the year, what, you know, at December 31st, the balance of that appropriation is going to die. But COVID isn't going to go away at December 31st. So January 1st, we'll have to appropriate the remainder of it to carry us however far it'll get us through 2022.
Okay, it's 3.1, not 3.4.
We've already claimed, the initial distribution was 3.4.
Okay,
We've claimed approximately 300,000. Some money for tracers up to July 31st. We've already got that money, and we put in a claim number 2 was for those 2 scanners for the juvenile center, and the remaining balance after those claims was the 3.1, which they've directed us to put into the general fund and make it subject to the normal appropriation process.
Commissioner, you all right with putting that in your budget?
You're the only one in.
The request was with this CARES project. I'm sorry I
No.
moved ahead.
No, you didn't. I
Put,
just I couldn't
3.1.
understand you. Yeah, are we comfortable with it going in our budget? Yes. This is based off of, I think, 3 weeks ago, we did an ordinance about this, recognizing that the new plan for reimbursement was based off payroll for anything in the emergency services category. As I voted on it, as I understood it, was that money would go to an account that we would use to reimburse everything that has come into the auditor's office receipted as COVID-19. We have met with EMA. We did that Monday to discuss their needs. Health Department has some needs that need to be covered. They've received funding from different areas, but that still doesn't touch what we need to address. We're looking at building modifications. For example, our auditor requested a plexiglass covering all along here. That's going to cost us over $4,000 to meet his needs. I'm sure once that's done, there'll be other departments that want the same thing. We invested yesterday in 2 sprayers so that we can do our own spraying of the courthouse. A vendor has been charging us $4,500 per application. We bought 2 sprayers for less than $3,000. So what we're trying to do now is, recognizing that we did not get the 3.4 that we thought we were getting, we're trying to be creative and innovative and save us money as much as possible.
We got the 3.4, but we've already.
We never got 3.4 million.
We
didn't get $3.4 million.
Oh, we haven't got it.
We never got we never got any money, Jim. No money came our way. We've been paying the bills
Yeah, well,
based off what we have, and we've discussed this ad nauseum. Money has not come to us. Money was not reimbursed to us because requests were not sent by your office for reimbursements. The money's coming to us based off that payroll. If I'm off base, please let me know, but that's how I understand it.
I just want to make sure with Mr. Wright that is this a request of council? Is this an additional appropriation? Is this just we can recommend this?
Well, I was
not aware of, that Jim was gonna bring this up today.
I wasn't
but-
either. That's why I'm
Yeah.
saying, can we act on it, or can we even make this motion today without having any paperwork or anything in front of us?
It's kind of a work in progress.
It
Yeah.
was discussed at the November meeting.
Yeah,
And that we needed,
yeah.
because we need to do it at a
It was
special
open-ended.
call.
but it was put on the agenda for the committee meeting.
Well, it was added because it was discussed that we'd be doing it, but if you get it on here, you avoid all the first reading and, I mean, because it was discussed at the council meeting as well.
Right.
November meeting.
We don't have, nobody has a copy of that ordinance that we passed right now with.
I don't have it when,
We could move it ahead, I think, as council and come out of general to apply it to the commissioners
Judy has a copy of the ordinance.
Oh, so-
and it would be, I mean, the expenses being incurred, whether we're gonna get reimbursed or not.
Yeah, we've paid the bills.
that's
Yeah,
right.
I know.
Yeah, we have received some reimbursement from what was sent in. One, your original from your contact tracers, number one at 64,000. Okay, the other two for the scanners have been sent in. However, as Jim stated, they're receiving them, but they are now putting the salaries on the first count. That's what they want to deal with. So they will reimburse our money for the scanners. However, they want to deal with salaries first.
Okay, so.
The auditor submitted yesterday for your reimbursement of your salaries of 3.1 million.
For clarification then, it was said that those scanners will come from that 3.1 million. So what am I hearing now is
No.
3.1 million
No,
plus
no, that's
scanners?
not correct.
Okay,
The
That's good
3.1
news.
million is after reimbursement per scanner.
okay.
And the first original 64,000 for the
That's good
contact
to hear.
tracers. This was 2 or 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, month ago. It was before we both went off
Very
set.
good. They've changed it 3 times, and it's staying ahead is the key, as you've mentioned many times.
Okay.
Michael, can you help me with a motion here then
Yeah,
on?
so I think the, motion would be to put, I mean, you're saying, I'm just, want to clarify something.
We will be setting up for an account line item in the 3 series, so that will be sent to them in the general fund for COVID-19 expenses. The state says you can put it in a location if you choose. If you don't want to, because that's a local ordinance. However, Jimmy and I talked about putting it in the commissioners just so that there is a location to it. It would be in the amount of the 3.1 million. Any of the expenses made would be adjusted to that.
Exactly, the appropriation need is $3,101,767.
767.
Say it again, Jim.
$3,101,767.
That's the remaining CARES money being held by the state.
Yeah,
And our payroll submitted was higher than that, correct? So they're paying us the balance of the 3.4.
yeah.
That was basically for the sheriff and the jail for about 2 months.
March to October.
Yeah, however, that amount would have only hit the sheriff and jail for
So we're
about
taking it
2
from
months.
county general to what specific line? I mean, is there a specific line
Yeah.
yet?
There will be, we will be establishing it. I spoke with the state just in the last couple of days to establish account line item number for it.
We'll get a number to
It'll be on your
advertise
ordinance.
and-
So an appropriate motion would be a favorable recommendation to the full council for $3,101,767. I say from county general, correct?
General fund.
To a to be determined line in the
In the commissioner budget.
commissioner's budget. Good?
Good. And this one line item, what it will, another advantage, rather than spreading it out to, various departments for individual, this, in one line item, it's gonna allow us to track the remaining balance
Right,
over a period of time.
right.
It'll tell us
Just telling you that it will.
what we've got left out of this at any one time. At any point.
Okay. Can we repeat that?
No, we're good.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's good.
we just need a second. Go ahead.
What do you do?
Me set? You got a second. I already said it.
I'll second.
Yeah.
You said it?
All right.
I second.
All right. Motion is to appropriate $167 into Commissioner's budget
For COVID expense.
for COVID expenses. That cover it? Cover it?
Yes.
Just for information only, I
Sure.
was calculating some expenses. My guess is that by the time you're said and done, unless the commissioners go
Yeah.
crazy and wild,
That was a good chance
your
to-
total expenses are probably gonna hit 1.5 to 1.7.
And that's not counting payroll.
Huh?
And that's not counting the payroll
No,
that we've been
that's
spending.
no
So
Additional
it's well
payroll.
over.
No,
Yeah.
that will be in,
Just
Yeah.
expense.
Yeah.
That's where it gets confusing, is that we call it a payroll reimbursement, but that's not
But-
reimbursing payroll, it's just a big.
but it does include any of the overtime obtained by the health department.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay,
Contact
so
tracers.
I'm just saying that your CARES Act expenses will probably come in under, and that's a high estimate, 1.7.
Yeah.
We're not done with it yet.
No, but but my expenses now are only hitting about $1 million, $1.1 million. So that's throwing out that they're gonna do,
Good discussion.
more.
Go ahead.
For information discussion now, is there, you or Jim or any of you guys see the possibility of the contact tracer expenses being reimbursed through another avenue? Because remember, the State Department of Health originally said that they were gonna
You
provide
okay,
money
guys,
for that.
for a minute or two?
Then
You okay?
we got a memo that's saying, no, we're not gonna do computers now, so we're gonna have to pay for those computers. Then, have you guys heard anything on that
there,
today?
there has been no other
Nothing else?
grants come up that have offered or the state's offered to pay.
And as we've been working with Jimmy and Cheryl on this, it literally has changed probably 4 times. And, when we got the, that was a real eye opener because we had purchases, we had made purchases so people could work from home. And then we were told, uh-oh, no money. So as you noted earlier, the fiscal responsibility and stewardness of the council has put us in a good position where we're not in a major situation, but we easily could.
And I might add that the Board of Accounts memo that outlined this process that we're trying to do now, the last line in it says it's subject to change.
And it has, they've lived up to that.
Uh,
Thank you.
Well, at this point, we seem to have a consensus that they're not going to withdraw that money.
No, they're wanting to get it out.
But it doesn't make any difference to the county when we've got to take these actions, period. We're not overspending just because we might be reimbursed. So,
Aye.
aye? Okay,
Councilman President?
yes.
This is not on your agenda, but I would just like to bring something to your attention because you are the annual budget committee.
Certainly.
Nothing to do with any of these, but it probably should have been addressed again in your annual budget. But you guys were brought forward an ordinance for a salary adjustment this year by a
That
department
was discussed at the November meeting.
for the Title IV.
Yeah.
Did we give it?
Nope.
But it was
Was it
considered-
voted down? Was it brought back up? I must have missed that part of the November meeting.
You had left the meeting earlier.
So was it you had an ordinance for it, or was it discussed?
It was discussed.
We did not have an ordinance.
Because
for
I
it.
did give information to Councilman Thompson and Councilman Loudermilk, who had asked from the very beginning if it was going to affect very many other people, and I told them 3 months ago that it would not. So
This is the ordinance.
the
Cheryl.
thing of it is that person places it on payroll every time, however, we do not pay it. So if there's going to be any vote on that, we would like to finish that we will owe them money if you go back retroactive.
The meeting's closed. There's nothing they can do now anyway. They already adjourned.
I understand that. I'm just bringing it to their attention in
in the
case they need to
judge's
have another
office?
meeting.
She's talking about Phil Adler's position, or the
I mean,
secretary.
We can't just leave people hanging.
That was when I talked to, talk to her about it at
Okay.
hearing. Okay.
So we're still gonna leave them hanging.
Thanks, guys.
Motion to adjourn. Anything else?